Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Barry, welcome to the Site Shed podcast.
Matt, so stoked to be here, man.
All the way from Indonesia, Bali, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell by your accent. Where in Indo are you? We're in Bali.
Canggu.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. And you've had a year-long surfing pilgrimage by the sounds of things?
Yeah, I've been here. It's funny enough, I moved here just before things went crazy in the world by freak chance, and I decided to take up surfing. It's been interesting.
Yeah, it's good fun. I've seen some things float across my Facebook every now and then of you pulling into some waves that I'm insanely jealous of. Although it's been pretty good here at the moment, so I can't complain too much. Yeah. And life's good over there. You enjoying living in Bali?
Yeah, man, life's good. Like the people are beautiful. Like it's a great place to live. It almost feels a bit sheltered from all the craziness. Yeah. In the other parts of the world as well. The weather's good and the surf's just about always on.
COVID situation okay? Manageable?
Yeah, I mean, like it's crazy. You're supposed to wear a mask when you ride your motorbike, but yet you can train and go to cafes and restaurants without it. Like it's
right.
It's more about compliance, I think, over here than anything else. And like I've had friends that have caught it and recovered and survived, and like everyone just seems to kind of like get on with it, not create too much of a fuss.
Yeah, I think it's probably, but in the serendipity of COVID, it's probably been there's been less people in the water for you, so it's probably a good time to learn. It can be pretty crazy over there. We got married over there, actually. So we got married in Bali because we're all mad surfers. So we did the week in Uluwatu and did our honeymoon in Lembongan.
Yeah, Lembongan's got some great breaks.
Oh, it's a great part of the world. I love it. Look forward to getting back there hopefully soon. Anyway, we're not here today to talk about surfing, sadly, but we are here to talk about how to build a profitable business that runs without you, and you're here representing tradiebusinessschool.com. So thank you for your time today, pulling you out of the surf.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Now, I was just saying offline, it's strange that we've never actually bumped into each other before, but a mutual colleague of ours, I suppose, introduced me to your book, and I read the book, which is called The Path to Freedom. So for you guys out there that haven't yet seen this, there'll be Amazon links within the show notes. Go ahead and check it out. But I love the book, man. It was a great read. And I think, the one thing I really loved about it, there's probably not a lot like most books, I suppose, that I read today, like there wasn't anything in there that was supremely unique, but it was a beautiful collation of all these important little business modules, which I just found was so useful because it was all just brought together in this perfect little bundle. Loved it. It's great. Yeah. And so are these all things that I suppose you guys are pretty adamant on in the coaching space with your clients and so on and so forth, things you've learned over the years?
I guess, I've been in business for a bit over 18 years now, and I originally had a kitchen and bathroom renovation company. And 7 years in, we'd hit a few $1 million in turnover. I had no freaking idea what I was doing. I had 14 odd staff and 4 contractors. I'd met a woman along the way and had a couple of kids. And I remember waking up one day just in so much pain, like realizing that I didn't have a business. I had this job. It was a prison sentence. Like I couldn't even go to the shop and get lunch without my phone ringing off the hook. And I think that that's quite common for a lot of traders, especially the traders that we speak to and work with as well.
Totally.
And I just wondered how I'd got it so wrong, but I wasn't educated about business. I wasn't educated on how to build leverage into things, how to build systems and processes. And ultimately, my partner left me. She took the kids and moved to the other side of Australia, and I was left with this creation that was a multi-million-dollar job, a shitload of stress, and feeling like there was no way out. And I certainly never thought that, 8 or 9 years later, I would have multiple companies that are doing big numbers and don't require me to be there. Like life's been a very interesting journey, but it's because of what I went through. I think in many ways it enabled me with the knowledge and understanding to now help people not have to go through those same things.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. And I mean, there's so much truth in that whole situation where as tradespeople, you're brought up learning your trade and whatever. And then you think, oh, I'm just going to go out there and run a business and all be sweet and merry because I'm good at doing what I do. And you just, at no point are you ever really taught any of that, which I suppose is why I have a podcast, why you have coaching businesses, and why people were out. I mean, to be fair, we're kind of preaching to the choir here. There's people that are listening to this podcast are people that are actually invested in growth and wanting to improve their businesses. But from my experience going through that all the years ago as an apprentice and whatever, like you're never really exposed to all these things that you learn post going into business that you really should be learning pre. I
guess too, like, I don't know about you, but a lot of the people that I worked for in my trade, the business owner was stuck in the business themselves.
Sure.
So I didn't even have that role model just to even learn off, even if I had the awareness of wanting to learn in the first place. And so I went out on my own. I was kind of trotting the same footsteps of, working my ass off like my dad, being stuck in the business like my role models before me, like, because I just didn't know there was another way.
Sure. Yeah. So you've, in the book, you speak about some core principles, and I suppose we're going to dive into some of those today. I know it's one of those, it's like a dream for a lot of listeners out there, trades or not. I would imagine I only really speak with trade businesses, but that whole idea of having a business that runs without you. And I know we've had a couple of guests on the show over the years who have successfully done it. Like a colleague of mine, Darren, lives on the Northern Beaches. He spent the years traveling the world while his team was, again, actually, they're a kitchen cabinetry business on the Northern Beaches. But, he did it really well, again, through systems and, processes and good management, all that kind of thing. But I think for so many people, it just seems like such a far out dream, the reality of it is so far from conceptual. I'm hoping we can break some of that down in this conversation today. And as I said, again, offline, I think there's probably an opportunity here for us to perhaps dive a little bit deeper into some of these topics that we're going to cover today. So if any of you listeners or viewers out there want to get more granular on anything that Barry's speaking about today, let us know. We're already toying with the idea of running a little mini series off the back of this. So you let us know what you want to hear more on, and we'll delve into it for sure. So Barry, where do we start?
I guess there's a couple of things that I want to share to kind of lay the foundation. The first thing is that I honestly believe we never have business problems. We have personal problems that get expressed through our business, and this is kind of how I found the coaching industry in the first place. I started coaching people around, mindset issues, right? Self-worth, sexual abuse, like phobias, anxiety and stuff. I never thought I'd be a business coach because I had failed in business.
Right. And
this strange thing happened where a year later, I realized all my clients are business owners and their businesses were growing since working with me. And I thought, this is really weird. How are the businesses growing when I'm not coaching them on business? I'm just coaching them on their own mindset. And so when I see time and time again, people that attract crappy staff, or their perception of crappy staff, or they have cash flow issues, or they have clients that don't pay on time, there's these common patterns that aren't existing in all business owners. Right. So the first thing I want to kind of share is we never have business problems. We have personal problems that get expressed through our businesses. So this is why I think, number one, more than anything, we need to work on ourselves first and our mindset and our beliefs before we start working on systems and processes and hiring the right team. And that journey, to me, never really kind of ends, because, again, like, what's enabled your friend to travel the world and have a business that works without him, sure, is the systems and processes. But I've also met a lot of people that have had systems and processes in place and still been stuck in their business because they haven't upgraded their mindset. They haven't upgraded their identity.
Sure.
And so the easy part is actually putting the systems and processes in place. The hard part is you stepping back, letting go of control, and allowing your team to step up and even make mistakes and that to be okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually, only last week we recorded a little 2-part series on mindset specifically. After 300 episodes, I've never done until last week any episodes specifically on mindset. I couldn't believe it. I was looking through the thing and I was like, how is this even possible? But yeah, sure enough. It's funny as well, like you speak to so many, coaches who basically say, well, the people have to be coachable. They have to be in the right mindset, the right frame of mind in order to take on the information. Like so often they could on paper look like this amazing potential customer, client. And the reality is they're just so far detached and so like their mindset's in such a wrong space, they're completely unteachable. I'm sure you see that more than anyone or have done.
There could be two things, Matt. One is they could be unteachable, or the other one is they could actually just be so overwhelmed that they're not, that they have no bandwidth to take on any more information. Yeah. And that's where sometimes coaches can see that person is like uncoachable, where the reality is they're just so freaking overwhelmed. They haven't got bandwidth to take on any more information.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I haven't been in that situation before, you know. I mean, it's evident even in things like reading books. Like sometimes you can go back and reread a book and it's like you've read a completely different book because you just haven't been in a situation to take on the information. Like, it's almost a prophecy. So when we're talking about mindset then, you know, how do we attack this? How do we approach it? Like, what's the go?
It's a good question. I guess, you know, like I'm by no means more intelligent than anybody else. I often look back and it's like, what's got me to here? Because I guess after 18 years, there's almost a disassociation of the pain and the suffering that I put myself through. And I put it down to one thing, and that is never giving up, right? Like right now, wherever you're at in your trades business, it might seem like it's a huge step to even be in a position where you're consistently profitable and paying your bills, let alone having something work without you being involved. But the number one thing is just be determined to never give up. Right? If every single day you get up and you take a step towards achieving that goal, that dream, eventually you're going to get there. The only time you won't get there is if you give up, right? So realize you haven't actually failed until you stop trying, right? The other thing to realize too is that any time we perceive that we failed or there's a problem or challenge, the easiest thing to do is just put a step or a system or something in place to ensure that doesn't happen again, right? Right now, you might be fighting fires all day, every day in your business. Rather than being consumed by all of that, look at what's one thing I can put in place today to ensure that doesn't happen again. And if you do that every single day, in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, holy shit, like you and your business will be in a completely different situation than where you are right now. But it's also very easy to get caught up in the overwhelm of like, oh, I'm not profitable. I've got crappy staff working for me. Clients aren't paying me on time, like all the problems that are there. Just work on fixing one thing every day, every week, every month, and realize that eventually you will get to a position where you haven't got that to-do list that's 100 lines long.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people, they clam up. It's like there's just so much to do. Where do I start? Kind of situation. So is there a process around that? Even do you teach your clients on how to, I suppose, you know, okay, well, let's find the biggest bottlenecks and let's address those ones first because that's holding back blah, blah, blah. Is that sort of how you take it?
Yeah. There's two processes I talk about in my book. One is the task audit and the other one's the opportunity evaluator. The task audit was a process that I created and I used every single week until I was operationally free of my business. And it's super simple. It's basically a spreadsheet where you track for a week to 2 weeks every single task and item that you do, both personally and professionally.
I wanted to ask you about this because this is something that I've read this over the years in many different books and whatever. And my biggest problem, and after I read your book, I'm like, I'm going to do this again. I'm just going to see what actually happens here during the day. And I just, for the life of me, I just don't write things down. Like I get caught up doing a task, I don't write it down, and then I forget about what I've done. We've got this really cool app where every day the whole team has to basically fill in this form, let everyone know about what they do each day, what they're doing tomorrow, so on and so forth. It works great for everyone but me. I'm the biggest bottleneck in the business there. So do you, I don't know if I need to set myself a timer or I need to do something, but it's just me and my team nuts.
Well, two things that I did. One is I sat down and I wrote as many things as I could physically remember that I do in a week, both personally and professionally. And I'll tell you why you got to do it personally as well in a second. And then I would set a half an hour block every Monday morning before anything, like before the phone started ringing, before the doors opened. And I would sit there and review, has there been anything extra that I've added on the list, or has there been anything that I've passed on to somebody else? Once you've got that list of things, you go down and write, how much time does it take me to do it? At what frequency? Is it daily, weekly, monthly, fortnightly, annually? And then is it something that I can class under one of four categories, DOCS? Is it something I can delegate? Meaning delegating is to somebody in your organization already. Now, whether they're there at the moment or whether you want them to be there in the future is irrelevant. But is this something that eventually I want to delegate, right? Don't worry about when or how. Just put down, it is something I can delegate. Is it something I can outsource? Like, am I doing my SEO and writing blogs when I can outsource to someone like you guys, right? Is it something I can outsource to a contractor outside of my company? Is it something that I should continue doing because I love doing it, I'm great at doing it, or it's important for me as the business owner to do it? Or is it something I should stop doing because it's just not making me money or getting me time or moving me towards my goals, right? And obviously, they're the easiest things to do. Then as you start to kind of get on top of that list, it's like, okay, this week, what's one thing that's just really giving me the shit or that I don't want to do? Or what's one thing that's consuming a huge amount of my time? If I look down, if I'm spending time through the week cleaning my house and I don't love it, and I got to hire a cleaner for $25 an hour, just hire a freaking cleaner, because that hour that you've saved, you can put into quoting more jobs or selling more services or operating your team. So start to work out what your time is worth. And a mentor told me a long time ago, he's like, Barry, he's like, stupid people spend time to save money. Smart people spend money to save time. And this was a big flip of me moving out of that employee mindset into the mindset of a business owner. I'm like, I haven't got much money, but I'm using all my time doing shit that I don't enjoy doing and that are low-value tasks. I've got to hire someone else to do it. And so it was a bit of a thing to get my head around, but I hired a cleaner, I hired a chef, I hired someone to manage my emails and follow up my quotes. And that time that I saved, I didn't spend on Facebook or Instagram. I saved that going and chasing more work, because more work meant more money. And that was a higher ROI of my time than cleaning my house or cooking meals, which I didn't love doing.
Right.
So there's a bit of a mindset shift in that, Matt.
Sure. No, totally. Yeah. And I mean, I reckon that is such a great place for people to start with task management, like doing those audits. Honestly, it's amazing when you look at it and you go, holy shit, I've spent this much time this week in support tickets, client support tickets, or whatever it might be, like it's just, until you actually do that, you don't really realize where your time goes. You just think, holy shit, how's another week has gone past?
Yeah. And I guess a couple of things. Number one, like, it seems too good to be true or too easy, but to be honest, often this is what most business owners make the mistake, is that they complicate things way too much.
Totally.
Business is actually not that difficult.
Yeah.
Right. We make it difficult. Second is have the discipline to do it every week. Like make this the most important thing in your business, because at the end of the day, aren't you expecting your guys to do timesheets?
Yeah.
To know how much to bill on jobs, to know how much to pay them. So do this to yourself, but for the purpose of not making more money or paying yourself more, but creating a better, more robust and more profitable business.
Yeah, there's so much to be said for simplicity. And I think and I am like the most guilty person in the world for overcomplicating things like, oh, look, a new piece of technology. And you know what? I'm going to give you some credit actually, because after reading the book, like we've got, loads of SOPs and they all live in this platform and everything. And over the last few months, I've noticed that there's been some bottlenecks with how accessible they are. Well, they're completely accessible. They're all cloud-based, but like just being able to find certain things and certain procedures. And after reading your book, I've made the decision to go back to just putting everything into Google, which we used to do, have everything just in simple Google Docs just to make it nice and easy. And so that's happening right now. We've got the team building them all out, taking them all across into Google Docs so we can remove one application, which we essentially don't really need. And although it looks bright and shiny and looks cute, it's kind of creating more headaches than good,
I guess that's where the systems come in. Like if you read the task audit process in the book, like that's the foundation to then start to systemize your business. And where I got stuck for many years in my trades business is I thought that I had to be the one that systemized it. And it's like, as the visionary, the entrepreneur, you're more big picture. It's harder for you to get stuck in the weeds and do the detailed work. And you're the worst person to systemize your business.
Yeah, sure.
Because either A, you're going to overcomplicate it, or B, you're going to miss steps out because you just don't realize you're doing them because you've done it for so long.
Yeah.
So I teach away in the book so simplistically to where you actually hire people before you systemize their role. You train them, and as you train them, they systemize their role for you. But you've created the framework around how they systemize it. And this is how I've built multiple businesses without being involved and hiring great talent, because I've just got a very simplistic system that freaking works.
Yeah, that's it. And there's so much to be said for involving your team in that process. Like if you want to get somebody to follow a process, have them invest in it and have them create it or whatever. Because if it's just you giving them a SOP, it's like another order, Whereas if they've invested into it, especially for the guys out in the field there, we notice this a lot with the guys on site. I say to them, why is this falling over, or why are you having issues with this? Oh, because of, blah, 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 this part of the process. I'm like, well, why don't you're sitting in an office telling them how to do something they're out there doing every day. Like get them to come up with how to do it better. They're the ones doing more of it.
But that requires that shift we spoke about at the beginning, Matt, which is letting go of that control. Like
right.
One of the key attributes of entrepreneurship and what gets us out of or through startup stage is being in control, right, and hustling. But that also becomes the biggest bottleneck to move into scaling phase, where you kind of start, tipping over the $750K to $1 million mark. Is if you're controlling too much, you're going to build a team that relies upon you rather than what I call entrepreneurs, which are entrepreneurs in an organization.
Sure.
Staff members that think for themselves, that create their own systems, that solve problems and don't need you to be over their back micromanaging them.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess that is a tough thing when you've always done something a certain way and you've grown your business perhaps really quickly to that point. And like you say, this is things you don't really know. But if you haven't done it, you don't know, right? So you get to a point where you've always done it a certain way to get where you are, and it's worked really well. And now to get to the next stage, you're telling me we've got to basically reinvent everything, and you kind of do. Otherwise, you get the same result.
Honestly, I kept repeating the same mistakes over and over. Like I reckon I failed more than most because I wasn't super smart in my approach to business. And I guess that's what got me to the methodology we've now taught, thousands of business owners and trades and contractors in my book. And also too, one thing you would have found is it's not just ideas, Matt. Like each chapter, I've then written a process of how to implement that chapter.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't have made it any easier. And I wrote the book for me like 10 years ago in business that knew I had to put these things in place. But every book kind of gave me the why and the what, but not how I go about doing it.
Yeah, no, that is actually brilliant. I should have brought that up. Barry does give you guys after every chapter a practical how-to on what you should be doing for that specific chapter. So it's essentially it's kind of like a blueprint, right?
Yeah, and the cool thing is, like, we've had clients that have bought 10 books and given one to each of their staff, and every month they focus on a chapter, and their staff go and implement that chapter.
Sure.
Right. That's the cool thing about it as well. Like, you're there to work with your staff. Like gone are the days of this hierarchy where you sit at the top and have all these people underneath you. Like, no, like people want to be involved in building and creating something together. They want to belong. Yeah,
exactly right. And to be fair, it's never going to grow without them. So why not get them involved?
Absolutely.
What's next?
I guess one thing just to finish off the task audit is right now your business is going to want one of two things or both, and that's more money or more time. Like you as a business owner, you're either going to want better cash flow, more money, or more time, or maybe you want both. So when you go through the task audit process, start to prioritize the things that you delegate or outsource based on, do I need to free up time or do I need to make more money? And that's where your focus should go. Like, I think
for that specific task, Barry?
What's that?
Is that for the specific task that you've jotted down? Is that what each one you...
Well, think about the moment, it's like, oh, I've got no time. It's like, okay, look for the task that consumes the most amount of time and invest in passing that across. Or, I haven't got much money, so where do I need to focus more of my time? Maybe it's on sales and marketing or quoting. So is that me doing more quotes and follow-ups? Or is that me hiring maybe a virtual assistant that can follow up those quotes for me?
Sure.
In trades business, and I'm sure you can relate, Matt, I remember for me, it was a very lumpy cycle because I had no work, so I'd go and quote a lot of work. Then all of a sudden I'd generate a lot of work, so I'd go and do it all. And then work would run out because I'd stop quoting and doing sales again. Mate, we're switching between those roles and those hats.
We get it more than anyone. It's people coming to us when they need work instead of when they've got work and they should be marketing in order to sustain it, So, yeah.
I think the other thing too, like there's a reason that I set the chapters up in the way that I did. Like, I left mindset to the end and I started with vision. And I've had a lot of people question me on interviews, like, why have you started with vision? Because I guess, if you're a business owner that's overwhelmed or you need money, it's like, I don't have time to sit down and create my vision. Like, I want you to tell me how to make more money. I want you to tell me how to make more time. But unless you're clear on what your vision is, and your vision, it might be something grand where you want to feed 1 million homeless people around the world. Or it might just be, I want to make enough money that I can go to the restaurant and pay for my wife and kids without checking my bank account. Yeah. It doesn't matter where it is. But if we haven't got a clear vision or a clear outcome, how are you making decisions in your business, right? How are you informing the decisions of who to hire, when to hire, what jobs to take on board, what jobs to turn away? Like, you're being very reactive because you're not making decisions based on the end in mind.
Do you find as well, Barry, like over the years that you've found that whole vision process, goal creation, whatever, have you found that helps get people improve their mindset and get them into a better mindset? Like once they've got they've got something to strive for.
Yeah, well, I think, Matt, like everyone goes into business for some reason.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes there is the accident entrepreneur that kind of like somehow found themselves in business. The next thing they've got this multi-million-dollar company, no idea how they got there, no systems in place, and everything's burning around them. Right. But I think that, to some degree, everyone's got an idea of what they want or what they wanted to create, small or big. Yet business has a way of consuming us. It's like surfing, right? The swell sometimes a good swell has a way of moving you off the mark of where you should be to catch the wave. And so unless you're onto those land markers and constantly checking it where you're out in the water, next thing you know, you're in the wrong position. You miss the perfect wave. You get smashed by a wave. Business is the same, right? You need to understand like where you want to go, and you need to build in time into your weeks, into your months, into your year to constantly reflect on that, to know whether or not what you're doing is moving you closer to it or away from it. And if we're not reflecting on what that vision or what that goal is, like, again, how do you know what position you're at in your business or in the third analogy, in the water?
Yeah. It's one of those things that, I mean, especially, for in the trades with all the blokes, like it's kind of like this rainbow and unicorns sort of thing, like exercise that you try and get people that they need to go through. It's what it seems like to them, but they don't really understand the importance of putting that into play.
Do you know why?
No. Well,
because in many ways, like us coming through in our apprenticeship, we've almost built this mechanism into feeling a sense of self-satisfaction, self-worth, self-love, pride in seeing the outcome, in the completion of the job, right? We celebrate when that job's done, when that kitchen's fitted off, when we've, received the final check from the client. And so what we're talking about here is intangible. There's not necessarily something we can sit back and look and admire. And again, that's what blocks us from really kind of, I guess, stepping back from our business, is that we need to start to build a sense of self-satisfaction on a feeling internally rather than seeing something externally.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I guess that's just, I won't say it's harder to quantify, but it's just a different way to quantify it, right?
Absolutely. It's different.
Okay, that makes sense. So what next?
One other thing that's popped up as we've been chatting as well, often a kickback my guys get when they're chatting to traders on the phone is, oh yeah, but like I don't want to build a business that works without me. Like I love being on the tools.
Sure.
And this is what I want to say for that is it doesn't matter what you love doing, but until you build a business that can work without you, you've got a job, right? And if you've got a family to feed, if you've got employees that require an income from you, you've got a responsibility. And you're running a very, very high risk having a business that needs you. Yeah. I've met so many traders that have come to us after they've fallen off a ladder and their business went kaput for 6 months, no income coming in, staff had to leave, couldn't afford to pay their family. And these are things you're not necessarily thinking about when you're a fit young lad and you're out there on the tools hustling every day, but that is the reality. And so I think that the core goal of everyone that owns a business is how quickly can we get to a position where this thing will work without us. We can take a week or a month off and it still works, it still operates, maybe not as well, but it still works. Because then you have the choice. Like I'm choosing to now be on the tools because I have people in the office that are managing quotes and managing sales and managing orders and being involved.
Yeah, and that is a big thing. And I think that's, and over the years, there's so many coaches and things out there that try and sell that whole get off the tools approach, when the reality is they want to stay on the tools and get rid of the other shit. They've never done accounting or bookkeeping. They've never done, all the invoicing. They've never done HR. They want to outsource that stuff, which again is a kind of a testament, I suppose, to, and perhaps we're going to come around to this. And if we do, then let me know. But, that whole philosophy around creating systems and processes, it's going to be extremely hard for you to ever get somebody in to replace you in an area of your business or a team member or something like that, in something you don't want to do or you shouldn't be doing, so you can focus on what you want to do if you haven't documented that process down so you can train people on how to do it. Like I've never seen it work.
Yeah. And that's, we can chat about that now because it's a good point, is, what stopped me creating systems. So I had a kitchen and bathroom manufacturing company. I knew that I needed to write systems and processes to be free. At the time, I managed to get myself out of every role except putting the kitchens into the CAD program to load up for our CNC cutting machine. Now, the crazy thing was that I sat there night after night till 2 a.m. in the morning programming kitchens. I knew that my competition, everyone else around me, had other people doing that role. The business owner was out selling, talking to customers, doing quotes. But yet there was something inside of me. It was almost a belief that thought that I couldn't find someone to do that. But the reality is I was afraid of mistakes. I was afraid of costing me money, having someone else come in and make mistakes. And that's what kept me stuck in that role. Then I learned that I could actually have somebody else create systems for me. And the way that I went about that is I wrote one system, Matt, and I wrote the system for writing systems. And I gave it away in the book. I wrote a system that teaches people how to systemize in a specific way. And so what I did, I was like, okay, what role do I hate doing? I hate installing. So I went and hired an installer and I taught him how to install the way that I wanted to install. I gave them the system for writing systems, and I'm like, I want you to document everything you're doing in this way. And every week I want you to create 3 systems. So every week on a Friday, he'd come back, he'd be like, here's the 3 systems I created. I'd read them through, I'd check them over. I would number them, I'd put them in a document registry, and I'd save them in Google Drive. And that was how I started freeing myself role after role after role without me writing systems. Right now, my company has hundreds of systems, and there's maybe 10 to 15 that I wrote personally.
Sure. Yeah. And do you find as well, it's one of those, as important as it is to write systems, and one thing I do say I've used over the years, which has made a huge difference, and credit to Dave Jennings from Systemology for introducing me to the concept of flow charting, like workflows, and I know you're big on that as well. And I know that's made a big difference, because over the years, and to be honest, this is kind of one of the problems what we're having with our SOPs at the moment. We've got so many of them, and they're not specifically tying into a specific workflow. So people are like, oh, this has been documented, but I don't know where it fits, and I don't know at what point I'd have to access it. So they're struggling to find it, even though it's in the asset register. But that whole workflow, I think is extremely powerful, because you don't actually need to, very, very rarely anyway, we find that we need to create like a detailed SOP on every single step of that workflow. It's very often just a handful,
Yeah, well, this is where there's 2 approaches for me, and I know Dave, and done a lot of work with Dave personally as well. For me, the approach that I took was first going down the task order and just getting things off my plate, because I was overwhelmed. Like, I couldn't think about writing a flowchart for our marketing and sales process,
right? Because
to me that felt like too big of a chunk. I just wanted to pass on some tasks around, hey, here's how you order products, here's how you deliver a job to site, et cetera, et cetera. But it was once I started getting time that I was like, okay, like I need these to fit into a box. I need them to be easier to understand. And so I broke my business down into kind of key components: marketing and sales, fulfillment, people and processes like HR, finance, and then like strategy and management. And I basically created what you're talking here, like a flow chart for each of those components. So there's a flow chart around how do we go about generating business, whether it's organic, people coming to us, whether it's paid advertising, all the way through to them handing over deposit. Then once the deposit's paid, what's the journey that thing goes on from a deposit through to a completion of an order?
Yeah.
Then what's the journey that goes on through getting paid completely for that and paying our invoices? And then what's the journey around how we hire and manage staff? And so that's where the flowcharts came into it. And we started linking the individual how-to documents to key components of those flowcharts, which I found visually were a lot more easy for my staff to understand.
Totally. Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. It just puts it all into sort of a better, different perspective, And I think as well, that whole, like the flowchart side of things, I mean, so what are you saying? So obviously you like you said, you separated the business into departments, which is cool. I think that's pretty common practice. And then when you take the departments, have you got like one flowchart per department, or have you got multiple potentially?
No, generally we have one per department. So the way I speak about in the book is when you start to systemize, the main decision you've got to make is like, what buckets am I putting these systems under? And the general one that we use, like we've coached a lot of businesses now, we focus pretty heavily on trades and contractors, but generally I look at the buckets being marketing, sales, delivery or fulfillment, right? Installation, people and performance, HR, finance, and then what I call is heart, which under heart is basically overall business operations, business management, leadership, strategy, goals, things like that. So kind of like in everything else on a higher level. And so the reason that we decide those before we start systemizing is then on Google Drive, you set up a bucket for each. Mm-hmm. And so as your team starts to create systems or how-tos or processes in the beginning, they just start dumping them under those buckets. And they also get stored into like a document registry.
Yep.
Now, the reason I do that first is again, Matt, like we work with a lot of trades and contractors that are just too overwhelmed. They haven't got time to step back and really think through the steps of a journey that a client takes through marketing or sales.
Sure.
And often too, they try to systemize too early when the business is still infinite. Like that process changes and grows. Like I often recommend that you don't systemize anything other than how you get leads and how you make sales under $500,000.
Sure.
Because everything else changes. Over $500,000, you should have your systems put in place for how you generate leads or deal with incoming prospects, and how you sell. After that $500,000, you should then start to systemize money and fulfillment, like management of those jobs, because that often changes a lot until after $500,000 in revenue. And then you start to notice that there's kind of like what you'd say is your proven process of how you then go and deliver those jobs.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think you're right. I've definitely been guilty of putting processes in place too early, which just become redundant.
They just change.
Yeah, they just change. Like with snap of a finger. Oh, we've got this now done. The process is dead. So, yeah. But I mean, I suppose that brings up another topic, and I'd love to hear your take on the whole process or philosophy mindset around, system improvement, system optimization, treating them as an organism, not like a static, thing. Like, what frequency we revisit them to try and improve them. Do we address this through meetings? Who are we involved in that process? So on and so forth.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to, I just want to loop back for 2 secs. So I guess kind of our structure to try to paint a visual picture for those that might be listening to this is the first process is task audit. Like, you need to understand what you're doing, where you're investing your time.
Yeah.
Then that will give you some indication of like, what things do I want to pass to someone else in my organization or pass to someone out of my organization? As you start to pass those things across, you've got your system for writing systems, which is in my book, template. You start to train people and you instruct them, and as you train them, they're to create the systems for it. They start to get stored under the buckets, right? Which will give you an immediate relief and breath of fresh air and some time back in the business. Then you can start to step back and go, cool, how can I improve how we attract clients, or how can I improve how we make sales? That's where the flowcharts start to come into it.
Okay.
Now, this part around, can you speak about constant never-ending improvement? For my organization, it comes through 2 realms. One is that if we ever have a problem, like any problem whatsoever, like, I don't know, we get a complaint, something doesn't happen, something's overlooked, the very first question that my GM asks is, was the process followed? Right? And if the process was followed, we then go and open up the process and we look at where is the step in this that needs to be revised or what has been missed. Mm-hmm. So that's the way that each of these systems are constantly updated, is whenever there's a problem. And what you'll find, you'll get to a position where you just don't have problems every day anymore. You do have problems come through, but they're very rare because you've fine-tuned this machine in such a way that you've ironed out those gaps, those humps and the bumps. The second time they get reviewed is where we look at, okay, how can we now start to reduce time, energy, effort, or how can we increase profitability? And that's when we might go back to a system that's very well refined, but it's like, oh, this way of marketing worked last year, but Facebook's made all these changes. There's been all these changes in the marketplace. COVID's happened. Our ads are no longer working as well as what they are. What's a new way or a better way we can generate business? And that's when we'll go on, we'll fine tune a system that works very well, but it's just not working as good as what it can with the current environment. Is that?
Yeah, no, totally. Yep. I mean, and this is feedback we get a lot from the community, where they might create a process on something, and for example, a new piece of equipment or technology comes into the marketplace, the process doesn't get evolved, it becomes old and redundant, so people stop following it, and they stop following all the others that go with it, and then on the next minute, no one's following the SOPs. And so that was one of the reasons I asked, is, obviously we need to be improving and, optimizing and updating and revisiting those SOPs, and at what frequency. But it totally makes sense. If an issue pops up, you always go back to where that bottleneck in the flow happened, to try and address it from there. And I don't know about you, I've always just tried to fix that SOP and then go give it back to the same person and say, okay, see if you can do it now. And if it doesn't work, then go back and fix it again.
And often too, it's my staff. It's like, was the system followed? Yes, great. Okay, let me know where the gap is, what your suggestions are. Again, like I'm or maybe my GM's like not wanting to take this off them to fix it, because again, that then keeps me stuck in the business. The way that I have multiple businesses that are working without me showing up, without me being involved, is that the team are empowered in the structure that I've made. Now, if you're listening to this right now, you might be overwhelmed going, shit, like this is so much to take on board. But again, that's why I've laid things out as simply as possible in the book, because what happens is as you start to put these things in place, you build a feedback loop into them. It's like the task audit. It's not just something you do once, you then schedule it weekly.
Sure.
And you start to build habits around that. We have, my businesses have a weekly team meeting called a week's meeting, the wildly important goals meeting. And again, I speak about that in the team section. There's an agenda in the team section, how we do it. The last half of that meeting is all about the issues, or the shit bits we call them. So every single week, my GM will say, cool, what are the issues or opportunities? And all my staff will do is unload any problems, any challenges, any ideas they've had around how to improve the business. They select the top 3 and they solve them then and there on the meeting. And so that's a way that every single week, my businesses are becoming more profitable, more efficient, and my staff are becoming happier and more fulfilled in their job. Because again, we have this feedback loop of fixing issues, whereas most people, they fix them or they try to fix them and they hit them in the face, or when they hit them in the face, they push them away because there's just so much going on.
Yeah. And so when that happens, when they make these improvements or whatever, is it up to them to go and implement them? Or have you got like somebody, like Dave calls the systemologist, have you got somebody in the business that's their job?
Well, so there's three aspects. There's accountability, there's responsibility of the two main parts of a system. So the person that's accountable, right, it's their job to make sure that thing is achieved, right? Let's just say we want to make this sale for $1 million. They're accountable to get it across the line. But there might be several team members that are responsible for projects or subtasks under that accountability.
Right.
So the systems are the same. So we have managers that oversee marketing, sales, et cetera. It's their responsibility to make sure that job, that deliverability of the KPIs in their area are done. But there's team members that are responsible. So when we go through the issues list on a meeting, it will get assigned to somebody to get signed off on. So Matt, you might say, oh, hey, there's an issue with X, Y, Z. It's like, okay, who wants to take that on board? Right, John, it's up to you. So next week when we come back around, we open up last meeting's issues before we bring up new issues. And it's like, okay, John, was that done? Yes, great, tick it off. If not, why not? Right, so there's always a follow back up at that meeting to make sure that it's been done and ticked off. Sure. And if it's not done, it's like, why wasn't it done? Where are you stuck? What do you need? Who needs to help you in that?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. No, that makes sense.
And the most important thing is that there always needs to be a single point of accountability, one person.
Yeah. Right? To champion it.
Absolutely.
Is that always the same person or will that depend on the task? Yeah. Okay.
Depending on the task, depending on the role, depending on the department.
Sure.
If you're a sole trader, yes, it's going to be the one person for a while if you've got a small team. But as your business starts to grow, it's like someone will put their hand up for it. If no one puts their hands up, they'll get assigned. Like my GM will assign it based on, her knowledge of who's best to complete that task.
Sure, love it. What's so where do we go from here?
I guess again, like what's the common theme that we're talking about is just being clear of where you're going. Like be constantly clear of what that North Star is in your business. And at the moment, if you're overwhelmed, it might just be getting your time back. If you're having issues paying your staff on time, it might just be getting money in. If you've moved past those kind of survival issues in your business, it's like, okay, it might begin to the stage where you can exit and have something that works without you so you can choose what role you play. But build in constant touch points to review, are we heading towards that or not? And this is kind of the way, Matt, that I do everything in my life, whether it's learning to surf, whether it's my relationship with my partner, with my kids. It's like I've got kind of outcomes that we're working towards, and I have regular points where I sit back and review, because otherwise we just kind of get swept up in the day-to-day of life until something hits us in the face. We realize that we're nowhere near where we think that we should be or where we want to be in that situation.
Yeah. So essentially setting the plan and keeping on track towards it, measuring it regularly, making sure we're on track. I think that's a big issue too that people fall over with a lot, or businesses fall over with a lot. They set these goals that are so far in the future without breaking them down into bite-sized chunks, and it just doesn't seem achievable. It's not achievable because there's no stepping stones to get to this macro picture. And I think
the cool thing is though is that anyone listening or watching this podcast right now, you guys are actually already doing this for your business, right? You're just not doing it for yourself. Like whether you're doing a kitchen, you wouldn't just turn up to site with a bunch of timber in the back of your van and some hinges and start to build this thing from scratch. Although they do that in Indonesia, that's not the way I know they do it in Australia and the rest of the world, right?
Oh, bamboo scaffold.
You go about creating a plan, right? You would then do a materials list. You would order the materials and you go through and do a cutting list. Like you would go and plan that out to ensure that when you turned up at site, you had something that fit right and looked right. Even if you get called from Mrs. Smith saying, I've got a leaking sink, you would go there and assess what needs to be done and most likely go to the hardware shop and buy the materials for that. So you're already doing these things. You're just not necessarily doing it in context of growing your business to an outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that. All right. Well, what do you reckon? Is there anything else we need to cover off on? I mean, there's millions of things we need to cover off on.
Man, there's so many rabbit holes. I think, without overwhelming the people, watching, listening to this today, I think number one is do the task audit. Like I'm going to plug my book, not because I need the book sales, but honestly, like that is, 18 years of me being in business and the last 10 years of me coaching, hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners, like into that one book. It's not going to teach you how to market and sell it and get more business, but by going through the first 3 chapters of defining like who are you and what do you stand for, will actually roll out in your marketing activities, but it will absolutely help you to create a business that's profitable and that can work without you. And, you know, regardless of where you're at right now, is if every single day and week and month, you just move one step closer to getting there. In 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months from now, like, you'll be amazed at where you can actually get to. But the most important thing is just discipline and not giving up.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is something that I've learned a lot recently, you know, over the last few years anyway, that whole consistency, you know, and that just turning things into positive habits and doing the right things, not ad hoc, not like occasionally, but just consistently showing up and doing them, you know. The task audit, for example, you know, like understanding, okay, well, I'm just going to dedicate myself to doing this this month and make sure it gets done. I mean, those little tiny bites, those little bite-sized chunks of, you know, achievements, they just add up to these huge pictures at the end of the month or the year or whatever it might be, you know. And I think like it's so empowering when you can see a big picture goal, when you hit a big picture goal, and when you reverse engineer that goal down into daily tasks, it's almost nothing. It's like these tiny little things you have to do consistently in a week over the course of 24 months or whatever. They add up to this goal, and it almost seems surreal. It's like, are you saying all I have to do is this to achieve this? It's amazing.
Yes. And most business owners are doing 50 things, not realizing that 48 of them aren't moving them forwards.
Right.
You know, there's two models in the book that will change your business's life. One is a task order, in terms of that will change your productivity, right? And give you an infinite amount of time. The second one is a profit plan, which will give you profitability. Like, that tool there will show you exactly where you need to focus in terms of ensuring that you have like bulletproof cash flow and profitability in your business.
Do you find, I mean, I know we've done a couple of podcasts on the whole profit first philosophy and that kind of thing. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, that's the first thing we introduced to our clients before.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing we introduced before. I'd been running that in my businesses for many, many years before I found Mike McAllowitz. But
right.
I was like, there must be an even better way of doing this. And the part that changed my life was having a benchmark percentage to work towards, because I just been putting money in buckets. That was how I survived and got through, you know, getting profitable in my businesses. But having that percentage to know roughly where you need to be aiming for, again.
Yeah.
It's having a goal that you can move towards.
Yeah, it's been such an amazing revelation for myself and a lot of the listeners and viewers out there that we've introduced that process to. And and again, I think, like anything, you know, like any area of business, having a coach or having someone that can keep you accountable and keep you on track with that sort of thing, you know, is so powerful. So we totally recommend using implementers for profit first and coaches for the stuff we've been talking about and all that kind of stuff, because otherwise you can fast track your results so much by doing so, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's great, Barry. I mean, we probably, as I said, we could end up down a rabbit warren of many different avenues here, but I think we probably should draw this one to a close and let the audience decide on what they want to hear more about. Do you just want to give us a quick run through before we leave on the chapters? And I mean, I know the book talks about the 9 steps to creating a highly profitable business that runs without you. What are those 9 steps?
Yeah. So the first 3 is vision, right? Which is kind of like the sunset. It's the thing that you never quite achieve, but you're constantly chasing. Next is mission. Mission is more like what's the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, the 10-year goal. The third is values, which is like the compass. The values let us know whether we're on course or off course to achieve that mission and vision. Then we go into goals, which is essentially, we have a process of breaking down your mission into, you know, yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily things to do to move you towards. And again, you spoke about before, breaking down those small chunks. Then we go into KPIs, like what's the basic tracking that we need to have in place that's like the dashboard in your car to make sure we're moving towards that. You know, from KPIs, once we have that stuff in place, we then start looking into, staffing and resourcing it. And, you know, how do we build our organizational chart? Or what we speak about more so is like the accountability chart. An organizational chart is kind of like who's doing the do. The accountability is more so like who's who in the zoo and what are their key accountabilities? What are they responsible for, which we touched on very briefly before, Matt, to ensure that every area of your business has someone across it and someone keeping an eye on it. We then go position descriptions, right? Like what are the position descriptions for each of those roles? What are the KPIs and position descriptions? And then we jump into systems, right? Which is like task audit, the system for writing systems. And then a really cool thing, which is, you know, went through Dave Jennings' stuff, which was great. We had all these systems, but I'm like, how do I automate these? And that was where we used a very, very simple tool, Asana, and we linked Google Docs into Asana, which allows at any point in time, me or anyone in the organization to have transparency around, is someone doing their job? The other cool thing too is if any one of my staff members is sick or has a day off, they assign their login to Asana to another team member. And even though that team member is not trained in their role, they can conduct their role with incredible efficiency at a whim notice because of how we set things up, automated through Asana. So we teach that process. We teach hiring, how to make sure that you hire incredible staff so that you can actually exit and ensure that the staff are going to do the right thing even when you're not there. We dive into some more around team, like how do you set up your meeting structures? How do you set up your agendas? How do you build a culture that actually wants to work while you're surfing? Like my team, there's no jealousy, there's no bullshit. They're happy for me doing what I do because they understand my role in the company and they're driven by their own role and they feel like it's their business. And then towards the end, we go into mindset, which is like, these things in place are great, but how do we constantly up-level our mindset and our identity so that we can actually step back, we can let go of control, we can really step into more of our full potential in the organization before finishing on kind of like what I believe is our responsibility as entrepreneurs. Like what responsibility do we have as entrepreneurs as opposed to just being an employee in somebody's business?
Is that 9? That felt like about 15.
9 is the core ones. So 9 is basically going from vision all the way through to systemization. The team aspect is kind of like bonus.
Yeah,
like
sure.
Now we have these things in place. How do we put petrol on the fire and get things to really move into a strong position?
That is a big issue that's a big issue for businesses, period, but especially in the trades, that whole hiring and retention conversation, which I know we've put a lot of work in the podcast in with guests over the years in the podcast to try and help streamline that process and alleviate some of those obstacles that they typically encounter. A lot of it in the way of just being able to provide, a career path instead of a job. The difference between, that is often a standout between you and your competition. I know a lot of guys have had a lot of issues with that over the years.
There's a couple of our clients. One's Harmy Williams, he owns Wycon Concreting in Geelong. Another one, Jack Challis owns Geelong Plumbing and Gas. And they both had similar issues around attracting good talent in Geelong, and especially Harmy in the concreting industry where you don't really need a certification.
Right.
And again, it's marketing and positioning. And so we work with them on their vision, mission and values and creating that. And it's incredible now, Harmy's, like Geelong's booming right now with everything that's happened in COVID. They're charging a lot higher prices than the local competition, winning a ton of work and actually bringing on board some incredible employees. But something I love about what Harmy and Jack have both done through their career path is they've created investment opportunities for their staff. They're teaching their staff how to invest their money, how to build wealth outside of the business, which again is very, very attractive for people to want to be involved. Like a lot of tradies we speak to in the early days are like, oh yeah, like staff, they just want to rock up and do their job and go home. They don't. They think that, but they don't. They want something more for their life, but you've got to scratch the surface and give a shit enough about your employees to ask the right questions.
Sure.
To understand what it is, to then build the career path for them.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. And I think, so often it's easy to pass the buck and pass the blame, down the line when the reality is you're just not leading them the right way. And perhaps through no fault of your own, you've never had to do it before, like we're saying before, but you can learn these things. These are all skills, right? Like all this stuff can be improved.
Yeah. We have a client of ours we work with to build an automated recruitment process that we roll out to all our clients now, where basically he's a carpenter, he's got a carpentry business in New South Wales. He turns the ads on and within days he's got, tons of applicants coming through. And this process is automated where it vets them all out. And so what he ends up in the end is like 10 to 15 really high quality applicants that he goes through interview process with. But again, like you've got to have gone through it to get there.
Sure.
It's very easy to be at the beginning where it's like, there's no good staff out there. I can't attract good staff. It's like, yeah, because they're going to companies that matter. They're going to companies that have strong vision, mission and values and actually give a shit about something greater than just going and doing the job and getting paid.
Yeah. Yeah, love it. All right, mate. What do you reckon? Should we wrap this one up?
Okay, let's do it. Man, we get to talk for so long.
So just to recap anyway, for You guys have been listening to Barry from Tradie Business School. The website's tradiebusinessschool.com. If you've got any questions, guys, by all means, you can either send them through when you see this podcast come out in the community. I don't know. Are you in the group, Barry? I'm not sure if you're in there yet. I'll invite you into the group.
I'll make sure I jump in there.
I'll send you the link. But if you've got any questions, let us know, guys. And again, if you have any follow-up questions or if there's any part of, first of all, go and read the book. It's a super easy read, and it's one of those books where you'll end up taking loads of notes like I have here. Go and read the book and get across the topics of the chapters that Barry's just discussed. Got any questions or you want us to do a deep dive in anything further, then let us know and we'll tee it up for you. So just send an email or let us know on social, whatever, and we'll sort that out. Barry, I think that's pretty much it. I'll have all the links to everything in the show notes, guys, including the links to the Amazon for Barry's book. Definitely go check that out. Mate, I think that's a wrap. What do you say?
Yeah, Matt, thanks so much, mate. I really appreciate having me on, and I hope you guys have got something out of our conversation today.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.